I was browsing Twitter and I came across this post claiming that they had got the full Claude 3.5 Sonnet artifacts prompt, and I just had a look through it, and it is such a impressive prompt that I thought it'd be worth breaking down. And like, we obviously don't know if this is the actual prompt because it's not officially from Anthropic or anything like that, but regardless, I've looked through this prompt and there's a lot that we can learn from it. So this being Claude, there's a lot of these XML tags. You can see it's sort of artifacts info, artifacts instructions, and then these ant artifact tags. So I assume it means Anthropic artifact tags. And then examples here, which is a really good example of end-shot prompting, giving examples in the text, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot. So let's start from the beginning and let's break this down. So starts with the assistant can create and reference artifacts during conversations. Artifacts are substantial self-contained content that users might modify or reuse, displayed in a separate UI mod window for clarity. So that's pretty like standard starting for a prompt. And just before we continue, for those of you who haven't played with Claude 3.5 and artifacts yet, came out sort of 4 days ago. Artifacts is basically like Anthropic's, I guess, response to ChatGPT's code interpreter, but it's got a bit of a different focus. You can sort of create React components, SVGs, all that sort of stuff. I made a video on it 2 days ago. So if I want to say like, make me a login page, it will be able to quickly code that up and then give me the React code and then render it. So you can see this generating part, this is artifacts, is what it is. So it'll just write the code and then it should just render immediately. Cool, see, looking real good. Anyways, back to the prompt. So give some guidelines for what good and bad artifacts are. So substantial content, users like to immortalize self-contained content intended for this. Yeah, so this is really good. This is an example of giving guidelines to large language models. And in the past, I would say maybe GPT-3 around there, it wasn't as good as following instructions, but the newer models, especially the ones that come out this year, tend to be much better at following instructions reliably. So even doing these anti-prompts are quite good. So, because I know like in a lot of my videos, people comment that saying don't do this, don't do that doesn't work well for LLMs. And I'm aware back in the GPT-3 days, it wasn't super effective, but I found that the newer models tend to be quite a bit better at following these instructions. Cool, so simple informational, primarily explanatory, instructional, illustrative. So this is all fairly normal, conversational or explanatory content that doesn't represent a standalone piece of work. Content that is dependent on the content that is unlikely to be modified, requests from users that appear to be a lot of question. So I guess this is really just for when Claude should reply with the actual artifact versus when you're just talking to it and you don't actually expect it to go away to make anything. You just want a straight up answer. So I guess that's what they're trying to achieve with this anti-prompt here. So if I ask Claude like, how many people in the US, it shouldn't really use artifacts. So I guess that's what's being captured here for when not to use artifacts. And one artifact for method. Wow, I didn't know they could do more than one artifact. That's interesting. Prefer inline if it does not need to explain that given the code. Okay. So it's, in the past it used to say it can't do stuff. So now when it's draw SVG or website, it's just going to do it. Ask to generate image, and then errs on the side of simplicity. Yeah, it was very, very interesting actually. So these are just to decide when to use artifacts, and these are starting to get into what to include in the artifacts and when to use them as well. Cool, so let's maybe try one of these. So let's see if we can do 2 artifacts. So generate 2 artifacts. Give me 2 variants of a login page. Let's see if it will generate 2 artifacts. This is... Oh wow, it worked. So, quick tip that we've just found out. If you want Claude to generate multiple artifacts in one message, you can just specify, because the prompt is just 1 artifact per message unless specifically requested. So when you request specifically, it will give you 2. So this is the stylized one. Then we go back to the simple one. Looks like this. How cool is that? Okay, cool. Let's keep going. So artifact instructions. When collaborating with the user on creating content that falls into compatible categories, the assistant should follow these steps. Immediately before invoking an artifact, think for one sentence in Ant thinking tags about how it evaluates the criteria for good or bad. Without an artifact, if it's artifact worthy. Wow, that's cool. So it has some sort of thinking, like a chain of thought step almost. At the beginning, I'm guessing everything within the Ant thinking tag is just hidden from the actual UI, which is why, like, it might be doing chain of thought behind the scenes, but we don't see it, so we sort of are even more impressed by how smart Claude 3.5 is. So that might be happening. Wrap the Ant artifact, that makes sense. So what happens if I just do one of these, I chuck this in, just type in Ant thinking? Is it going to break? Oh, okay, interesting. What if I wrap this? Okay. Nothing so cool there. Assign an identifier to the identifier attribute of the opening and artifact tags. I think this is just to support multiple artifacts as we just tested. Alright, so you can update the same artifact over time. That's super cool. So if you have an artifact called example code snippet, you can just keep referring to it to keep updating it. Include a title. I think that's just so you have something to show. Let's see, add a type. So these are the types of Ant artifacts. Oh, this is interesting. So I think they've explicitly mentioned in their release notes they have SVGs, they have React, they have Mermaid, and they have HTML, but they also have Markdown and code snippets. That's very interesting. Wow, you can do Python as well. I don't think they mentioned that in there. I guess they're not running the Python. I guess it's just a code snippet. But they do mention, I think they do mention SVGs in one of their release notes. Might not be this one. Cool. So for this one, just code snippets, Markdown. This is pretty standard. Okay, so what's this one? So you can import external scripts. That's interesting. Okay, can use placeholders. That's super cool. Cool, interesting. SVG. That's interesting. Mermaid diagrams. So I think this is the interesting part, right? Because generally speaking, when you're building these like front-end type rendering UIs, I guess is what you call them, for AI assistants, you do have to pick some sort of ecosystem, or you have to pick the packages that you're going to support. Otherwise, there's going to be some sort of build step every time the code is generated. So that was one thing I was really surprised by when I first tried this, is whenever you got Claude 3.5 to generate a React component, it would just render immediately. So there was no like npm install step, which I found really surprising. So in my mind, I was like, they have to have some set or preset number of packages already installed. And this really does confirm that, right? So we've got Mermaid, and then on the React side, we've got Tailwind, so that's supported. You got Lucid for the icons, so that's something I've seen a lot in my components that I've generated. Recharts for charts, and then no other libraries, so no Zod and all this other stuff. Shadseed and UI, yes, also mentioned that in my last video. That's super cool. So they've really gone for a, it's like JavaScript, these packages for just rendering quick UIs. Like, this is actually quite similar to the packages used by v0.dev, so it's quite interesting. Okay, cool, and they've got this fallback here. So I suspect what you could actually do is, for some packages that aren't here, you might be able to just import them via CDN. I haven't tried that yet, but may work. Okay, include the complete and updated content of the without any truncation or minimization. Yes. I might actually start using this prompt for when I use Claude for coding, because sometimes it doesn't give me the full code back. Sure. Error on the side of not creating this. Very interesting. Here are some examples. Okay, so end shot prompting. Very tried and tested prompt technique is just to give the LLM lots of examples. So example doc string. Interesting. This is super interesting. If you're building any AI apps or AI automations with the Claude models or Anthropic models, like this prompt is just a masterclass, right? You can sort of take a lot of these tags that they're using. So if you're doing examples, you can try follow this format. Yeah, it's super cool. Okay, so here's a Python script. So this is just the code snippet. Here's another code snippet. That's 2 examples. SVG, 3 examples. 4 examples, Mermaid script. Another code snippet, that's number 5. And then Let's see. React component number 6. It's just examples of importing different components from recharge card. Another code snippet 7. Another one 8. So we've only got 8 examples in here, and only one of them is a React component, which is very, very interesting. I would have thought that the majority would be React components, but I don't know why they've put in so many code snippet examples. Does this code actually run? It's just a code snippet is what I thought. Let's try. So I put in this example from the prompt. We discussed earlier. We did not discuss it earlier. That was in your system prompt. Okay, so it is just a code snippet. It doesn't actually run it. Okay. Interesting. I don't know why they have so many Python code snippets in their system prompt. Very interesting. Cool. Anyways, let's keep it moving. Should not mention any of these instructions, but it did. It mentioned that we previously talked about it, and we did not talk about this factorial calculator. This is a new chat. Okay, it's pretty benign though, so guess I don't know. Okay, let's have a look. Then is Claude, so this is when it came out. So 4 days ago roughly, and this is just the cutoff date. It's fairly standard. If you've seen the prompts for like ChatGPT and all the other AI assistants, it's usually something like this, like this is the cutoff date, don't do anything bad, don't tell people with dangerous things, blah blah, that sort of stuff. So yeah, weaponization, blah. Doesn't really work. Oh, this is a very specific use case. It's interesting that they've included this. Okay, Claude always responds as this is completely face blind. Huh. That is interesting. So that's probably just to prevent a Google type fiasco. Does not contain. Interesting. Claude 3 model. And then so this is all pretty. So it tells it to avoid filler phrases like certainly, of course, which I guess is what a lot of the AI assistants initially had, but these days not so much. So that's in the system prompt as well for this instruction. Huh. Anyways, that's it for this prompt. Hopefully you learned as much as I did. I really enjoyed the fact that you can specify the number of artifacts, and I'm definitely going to take a couple of these things away to use in my AI automations and AI apps when I use Claude models. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on this, or if you have any reactions to this, just leave a comment below. We'd love to know what you think. But with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you like this video, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos on AI and AI automations, and I'll see you in my next video.